One of the things that astrologers are most interested in is time and timing. Astrology seems to be about personality characteristics and descriptions of people. But of course, as we know, it's also a lot about prediction. And it's really a mathematical model of time and how time works through cycles that we measure using natural rhythms, specifically the movements of the planets. And countless thousands of years of observation, recording, and attempts to understand have linked those cycles to the unfolding of the human experience. And in many ways, a lot of those cycles are really based around the sun, which determines the cycles of everything on Earth. Most importantly, of course, the seasons, and that affects how most things grow and behave on this planet. And so often, it's a little bit like we consider ourselves somehow outside of that equation, that we are living freely and independently and doing exactly what we want to do and are somehow immune to the cycles of nature. And sometimes we get a rude reminder that the cycles of nature affect us as much as they affect everything. One of the most important cycles of nature is the circadian rhythm. The circadian rhythm is the daily rhythm of the various processes in our body, and it's strongly regulated by the body, which maintains a biological clock in order to essentially know when to do certain things. Even if you take something as simple like becoming tired at the same time of day or becoming hungry at the same time of day, all of that is really related to our circadian rhythm. My interest arises because I have been researching a lot of what astrology says about timing on a really close-up hour-to-hour basis, mostly because of something we do in astrology to understand why things happen at certain times and be able to answer questions about that. You know, ancient people, ancient astrologers saw hours a little bit differently. They weren't 60-minute units. They were divisions of the day and divisions of the night. So, for example, there were always 12 hours of daylight. We say today that today there could be 9 hours and tomorrow there could be 8 hours, 54 minutes, and so on, because we're using this mechanical method of measuring time. In fact, our method of measuring time is so mechanical, it doesn't actually synchronize with the spin of the Earth or the orbit of the Earth around the sun. And we constantly have to make adjustments to that in order to synchronize our timekeeping and our calendar with what's really going on, naturally speaking. The 24 hours were originally 12 hours of daylight, 12 hours of nighttime, and the 12 hours, say, of day were measured from sunrise to sunset. That time was measured, divided by 12, and those are the 12 hours of the day. So it is a way of understanding and managing daytime and nighttime experience hours. And it was a way of understanding the various stages of each of those two halves of the day, those two unequal halves of the day, that of course are equal on the equinox. So that constant relationship between the rising and setting of the sun, the way that we experience our own everyday lives, and nature itself, as that would adjust to the equinoxes and the seasons change, would go to the extreme at the solstices and the seasons change, all directly linked to our own actual experience of time as we were measuring it. So we would know, for example, as we approach, say, the summer equinox, the hours are getting longer and longer, not just the days, but the hours get longer and shorter as we move away from them. So that is a very integral, direct experience of our lives, and things that we might do during the day would have been closely related to that. So then when someone said, what hour is it? They might have said it's the first and the second or the third or the fourth hour. They mean since sunrise. And those hours were in fact connected to the planets. And the reason also fascinates me is because in recent years, just in small ways, biologists and medical specialists have discovered that taking medications at different times of the day may have a dramatically different effect. Dramatically different. It could be the difference between the medicine working and the medicine not working. In some cases, it's the difference between the medicine being helpful and the medicine being harmful. There is a lot of research of this, but in a very small niche area, circadian biology. But a leading circadian biologist by the name of Sachin Panda has written a book about his field and about his work and about the work that has happened in the last few years. I came across this book while researching this about the different hours of the day from an astrological point of view. This book has nothing to do with astrology, and it's actually quite hard science at times. Despite the name, the circadian code, which makes it sound like one of those things that you crack and you've got everything sorted out. And wait a minute, because this book is about that. But just rewinding a few steps, and it is a science book as well, it's about the tremendous amounts of research that has been done by biologists, exercise physiologists, mathematicians, psychologists, sleep researchers, nutritionists, endocrinologists, ophthalmologists, geneticists, oncologists, various kinds of medical and biological and human sciences specialists who have worked together. Panda says, working together, we, referring to all those people, we have found that simply adjusting the timing of how we live and making easy lifestyle changes is the secret to restoring our rhythm. And it will surely be the next revolution in healthcare. He says, if you look at what I have uncovered through my research and through working with the best minds in all of those fields, you will be able to make small changes to the way that you sleep, the way that you eat, work, learn, exercise, and light up your home that will make a profound difference in every aspect of your health. He says, in fact, the benefits that you will reap from adjusting yourself to the circadian clock correctly can be far more effective and long-lasting than any medication and any special diet. Panda claims that by adjusting ourselves and understanding how the circadian clock works, we can eliminate much disease, illness in our lives. We can eliminate a lot of depression and anxiety, and we can eliminate weight problems. He is serious about it, and he says, if you learn to follow your circadian code, you never need to go on a diet. Now, it sounds like that hype and do only this and fix a million things. It's something that's easy to test, easy to check yourself, doesn't require any special equipment except your very own body. And most importantly, a lot of it does make sense, and all is backed by science. So that's what became very fascinating about this book, is that it wasn't just some wild health claim. It was derived from an enormous amount of research, kind of that in its own way astrologers have been doing since forever, not as research, but claiming that the different hours of the day, we would say ruled by different planets each day, tell us what to do with those planets. So astrologers would say, for example, only consume a herb of Jupiter, which would be a liver herb, say. Only consume a herb of Jupiter during the hour of Jupiter. And the hour of Jupiter, there'll be one or two during the day, and one or two during the night, depending on which day it is, as they all cycle around in a special way. And as perhaps arbitrary and married to the astrological system that may be, a lot of these observations were ways of managing what was observed. And the fact remains that the medicine was discovered to be more effective, certain medicines at certain times of the day. Our ancestors might have attributed that to all the planets and all sorts of reasons, but very importantly, they were in fact onto something. They had discovered aspects of the circadian rhythm. Circadian means daily rhythm, daily process. Every plant, every animal, and every human has a circadian rhythm, and which not only is going on with ourselves, but connects us to the clocks around us, the clocks of nature and the clocks of the other species. So in the same way that I might take a herb of Jupiter during a Jupiter hour of the day, in that plant itself, its sap would rise and fall during the course of the day, how circadian rhythms affect plants. There are various processes, just like our various processes are rising and setting and changing according to circadian rhythms. Amounts of active ingredients in the plant will vary up and down during the course of the day as it makes those processes. So in terms of medicine, if we were using a plant as medicine, as we do, reaping the medicine at the right time and processing the medicine at the right time and taking the medicine at the right time are all related to these natural daily rhythms. You can see, once you realize that picture, how this description relates us to time and something much larger than ourselves. So much so that, as Dr. Panda points out, when these daily rhythms are disturbed for just 1 or 2 days, we can't reset our clock. The clock can't set the right messages into our body and to our genes. We now understand that genes get switched on and off by various processes or various things that happen in the body. And one of the main management systems of how genes are turned on and off is, in fact, the circadian rhythm. So he says disturbing the circadian rhythm, even for as little as 2 days, causes messages to fail and not be sent, and our body starts functioning less than an ideal. Our mind starts functioning less than an ideal. And if the disruption continues for days, weeks, or months, we can succumb to infections, diseases, and mental problems, insomnia, attention deficit disorder. He links it to depression, anxiety, migraine, diabetes, obesity, cardiovascular disease, dementia, and cancer, amongst many other things. Again, all with science, not just with claims. It's not meant to suggest that a magical cure is to kind of fix your relationship with the circadian rhythm, but certainly the best you can do for your health is manage your body as optimally as you can. Other stuff may still happen, but even if you have to fight disease or whatever the case may be, you're in a much better position to win that battle if your body is running optimally. Now, as he says, it's not as simple as a clock. There's 3 core rhythms that are all interacting with each other, for one, and also to remember that it's not possible for our bodies to do everything at once. So things need to be scheduled in different ways, and things can't happen at the same time. So certain processes wait for each other or depend on each other. All makes complete sense, especially if you think of, any kind of production line, but we forget that our body must be the same. So the 3 clocks work like an orchestra, says Dr. Panda, to create 3 major rhythms that are the foundations of health: the sleep rhythm, the nutrition rhythm, and the activity rhythm. All of the rhythms are intimately related to each other, and all of them are under our control. Sleep, nutrition, and activity are all under our control. So as much as the circadian rhythm happens on its own, we have a very powerful influence over it. We just have to disturb one of those 3 rhythms, and all 3 of them go out of synchronization, and we get into a spiral of poor health. He says it's more like a busy intersection that's controlled by traffic lights, and activities, the brain ordering the body to do things. People, just like people, arrive at the traffic lights. The signals from the brain arrive at the traffic lights, and they've got to wait their turn, sort themselves out, work with the flow of traffic. Each function comes from one direction and has to be set off in another, but they all converge at the traffic light. And he says if you don't manage the traffic lights, they're going to have accidents. they're going to all merge together, or they're going to collide and interfere with each other. And if we fail to pay attention to all of that, the signals become confused, and eventually our health becomes damaged. We've always known that cells communicate with each other, and now they've discovered a small cluster of cells that function as a master clock that run the entire show and are strategically located at the center of the base of the brain in the hypothalamus, which is the command center for hunger, satisfaction, sleep, fluid balance, stress response, and more. So a lot of our major processes all are regulated by a small group of cells that actually regulated by timing. And timing is something that we are able to control. And you'd think, from what I've said, that the most important thing to control is eating, because that's the thing that we have so much power over, what we eat. And he says, well, that is correct, but where you should really start is with sleeping. The circadian rhythm resets once a day, but that resetting happens at sunset the day before. Once you realize that today's clock was set at sunset yesterday, you appreciate the importance of last night's sleep. Because if somehow last night's sleep wasn't correctly managed, your entire day is off. And that's not only just about, as we know, I slept badly, so my day is off. It's actually you've damaged the circadian clock for that day. And again, building that up day after day is going to do an enormous amount of damage. So the point is, sleep is the reset of the clock. And sleep starts with the night before. So the clock sets when the sun goes down the night before. Our sleep pattern and the day that follows until the sunset is the circadian day. Basically speaking, the most important things we've learned about sleep in terms of the circadian code, says Dr. Panda, is that we need to get enough sleep, which is 7 to 9 hours of sleep, according to him. These days, we understand 7 seems to be a number that comes up a lot from many researchers. There's a lot of science in the book. And we need to absolutely, way more importantly than all the hype has made us believe, and there's a lot of hype, we need to stop with the blue light. We need to stop with the screens at night. He says blue light is incredibly damaging to our sleep and to our circadian clock. We've begun to understand in recent years how blue light is not good for sleep. We're using blue light filters on our glasses and hopefully using more warmer lights. Panda says in his house, when the sun goes down, all the lights that they use have a slightly orange tint. He says, change your kids' bed lights to orange lights at night. They'll sleep longer and wake up much more relaxed and calm and all of those kind of things. He says from infancy, make sure that the night light is orange in color. And there's a lot of science in his book to show that orange light at night helps ensure good sleep, helps ensure that the melatonin is properly produced and distributed and all those things. Blue light wakes us up. Orange light helps us sleep. Blue light actually tells your body to not produce melatonin, to start the active circuit and start the activity clock when you're supposed to be going to sleep. So he stresses it's much more important than any amount of hype has already told us. Don't get blue light at night. Do get enough sleep. And he says, ideally, you should be falling asleep between 10 and 10:30 in the evening, which I think a lot of other research has already told us that. So sleep is one thing. The other major thing that we can shift is, of course, eating, and not to forget exercise. So exercise is, look, any kind of exercise is good, but must be done. Exercise every day makes the enormous difference to health and to mental health more than anything. Exercise is the no-brainer part of this. Without exercise, none of this is going to work, because exercise also resets us, elevates our mood, elevates our sense of control, We can talk about exercise as a topic of its own, I guess, as we could talk to any of these. But what is interesting is the research about eating. And he says there's now an enormous amount of evidence to show that we should only really eat within an 8 to 9 hour window. And more importantly, he says most fat burning happens 6 to 8 hours after you finish eating, after they finish the last thing that you eat, and then increases exponentially as you go from there. So he says, after 12 hours of fasting, your body seems to start burning weight and fat incredibly fast. And for each hour after 12 hours of fasting, it goes up dramatically. So he says, once you've learned how to fast for 12 hours, extended. We know that today's understanding of intermittent fasting shows that it appears to be healthy to fast up to about 16 hours, and that gives you an 8-hour window, 16 hours of not consuming anything except water, which, you know, if I'd said that a few years ago, maybe people would have sounded more alarming, but we all do know about intermittent fasting now, and there's relentlessly consistent science to show that it is very healthy and has very good results. He points out that there's a lot of evidence to show that it can reverse illness as well. He says, we compared one set of mice having free access to a fatty diet to a second group that had to eat all their food within an 8 to 12 hour period. Mice that eat the same number of calories from the same food within 12 hours or less are completely protected from obesity, diabetes, liver, and heart disease. More surprisingly, he says, when we put sick mice on the scheduled feeding, we could reverse their disease without medication or change in diet. I remind you, the reason why biologists and scientists use mice is because their bodies do respond quite similarly to ours, as it so happens, I guess. But of course, a lot of research is done and on showing how things that relate to animals also relate to us. Of course, they do. That is quite a powerful discovery. They can actually cure a lot of the diseases that the mice face by putting them on scheduled feeding, limiting their food to an 8 to 12 hour period. And again, Panda talks about how we can learn to extend our fasting period. Start off with a 12-hour window of eating and a 12-hour window of fasting if you're not already doing intermittent fasting, and then extend the fast window as close as you can get to 16 hours. It's not only about weight loss, and it's important to understand that it's not only about weight loss, but it's also about a lot of other processes in the body and healing a lot of disease in the body and preventing a lot of disease. It's not a magic pill, as much as I don't like the circadian code as if it was a special secret or something like that. It's not a secret. I've in fact known about the circadian rhythm all my life because it fascinated me about astrology and how our nostrils alternate breathing every 3 hours, and all this magic happens in the body. As an astrologer, I've always been fascinated by that. But now the science is out, and the science agrees. Take charge of your diet, take charge of your sleep, and take charge of your exercise. Exercise itself helps reset the circadian clock and helps ensure that the other rhythms are working well. The great thing about all of this is that we don't even need astrologers, let alone science experts, to tell us which hour is which. For me, as an astrologer, it helps me understand why, when astrology looks at the hour-by-hour progress of the day, we are able to say there's times for things, there's times for not doing something. There's time to act, and there's time to not act. There's a time where you wait until tomorrow. There's all of these things which are really based on these hours that are, in fact, based on the circadian clock, because they work from sunrise to sunset and from sunset to sunrise. So the astrological clock is based directly on the sun rising and setting. The body's clock is based directly on the sun rising and setting. Through astrology, we've learned a lot of how to master time, but the most important mastery is ourselves. And if we can master our own clock, which is such an easy thing to do, we can master our experience of these hours. We can master, most importantly, our health and our well-being. It all starts with proper timing. Proper timing. What astrology has said forever, that life is all about. What most people who succeed at just about anything, even business, know, it's all about proper timing. Well, guess what? You've got the key to that clock. You can completely set that clock, reset that clock, and reset your life just by using the circadian code.